Now it's time to play on the entire flute. It can be helpful to practice this in front of a mirror to be certain you are placing the flute and head joint correctly. Carefully pick up the body and foot joint of your flute and place your head joint into the barrel as we demonstrated before. First, check to be sure that the embouchure hole is in line with the first two keys on the body of the flute. Press pause and make any necessary adjustments. We're going to make our first sounds without setting our hand position. Watch as Sarah demonstrates this entire exercise, then we'll perform this together. We will set the flute using a two-step process. Step 1 is showing the flute. Step 2 is placing the head joint. Sitting with proper posture, she will hold the flute by the barrel in her left hand and the foot joint in her right hand, resting the foot joint on her right leg. We will call this the ready position. Next, while holding the flute by the barrel in her left hand, she will raise the flute so the head joint is in front of her lips about 6 inches from her mouth. Using her right hand to support the body of the flute, she makes sure the flute is almost parallel to the floor. The keys near her right hand are flat and facing up. This shows that the entire flute is in the correct position. Now she will return to ready position. Now let's try step 1 together. First, sitting with proper posture, hold the flute by the barrel in your left hand and the foot joint in your right hand, resting the foot joint on your right leg. Again, this is called the ready position. While holding the flute by the barrel in your left hand, raise the flute so the head joint is in front of your lips, about 6 inches from your mouth, as Sarah is demonstrating. Using your right hand to support the body of the flute, be sure the body is almost parallel to the floor. Now look at your keys near your right hand. They should be flat and facing up. Rotate the flute so the keys are in this position. This shows that the entire flute is in the correct position. Now return to the ready position. Press pause and practice this step a few times using these important reminders. For step 2, we'll start by presenting our flutes as in step 1. Then we will place the head joint correctly on our bottom lip. Watch as Sarah demonstrates this. Then we'll practice together. After bringing the flute up to step 1, she will simply place her head joint on her bottom lip as we did when playing head joint sounds. Be sure to always bring the flute to you. Make sure your bottom lip is covering 1/3 of the embouchure hole and that the lip plate is flush against your chin with no gaps. It's also important that the foot joint is angled slightly forward from your mouth, as Sarah is demonstrating here. It should never come behind your mouth when playing the flute. It should be slightly in front, as Sarah is demonstrating here. Now let's try this together. Go to the ready position. Now go to step 1, checking that your keys are flat and the embouchure hole is in line with your mouth. Next, simply place your head joint on your bottom lip as you did when you played your head joint sounds. Always bring the flute to you. Make sure your bottom lip is covering 1/3 of the embouchure hole and that the lip plate is flush against your chin with no gaps. Make sure that the foot joint is angled slightly forward from your embouchure and that the flute is almost or slightly below parallel to the floor. Press pause and practice this two-step process several times without playing a sound on your flute. Now that you have practiced correctly placing your flute several times, we can make our first sounds on the flute. Watch again as Sarah demonstrates this for you. Now let's perform this with Sarah. First, set your flute correctly using the two-step process. Make sure your keys are flat and that your bottom lip is covering 1/3 of the embouchure hole. Now play your sound with Sarah. 1, 2, ready, breathe. Now return to the ready position. Let's try this one more time. Set your flute, making sure your head joint is placed in the proper position and that you are focusing your air across the embouchure hole. Play your sound again with Sarah. 1, 2, ready, breathe. Now return to the ready position. Press pause and try this a few times on your own. Like the low sounds on the head joint, you can get more than one sound on the full flute. Listen as Sarah performs two common sounds you can get: a lower sounding note and an upper sounding note. For now, we want to play the lower sounding note. If your sound is very high, work to make your air more gentle and be sure you're not aiming your air too high. It should go across the aperture hole at a slightly downward angle. Now let's try this together. Go to ready position. Now set your flute using the two-step process. Play this sound with Sarah. 1, 2, ready, breathe. Go to ready position. How'd you do? Did you get the same sound as Sarah? It is important that your airstream is a steady speed and focused. If your sound is not consistent, then your airstream might be inconsistent or your embouchure might be moving, like this. Notice that her embouchure is moving around and that her sound is very inconsistent. Now watch and listen as Sarah demonstrates the correct sound. Notice that her embouchure is still and her airspeed is consistent. This produces a nice steady sound. Let's play one more time with Sarah. Go to ready position. Now place the flute correctly using the two-step process. Play a steady sound with Sarah. 1, 2, ready, breathe. Go to ready position. Now keep practicing this exercise with a mirror until you can get a steady and consistent sound on your flute. Each time you practice, focus on these essential elements of flute playing. Sit with proper posture. Set the flute correctly using the two-step process. Make sure the right-hand keys are facing up and flat. Always bring the flute to you. Place the head joint correctly with your bottom lip covering 1/3 of the embouchure hole. Keep the foot joint in front of your lips. Always take a full breath. Make sure your air is focused in the proper direction. Keep your airstream a consistent speed. Learning to control your airstream to get a consistent sound is an important part of playing the flute.